look inside and find. Where a person loves from. That's the reality, not what they say. Hypocrites give attention to form, the right and wrong ways of professing belief. Grow instead in universal light.
Violinist, concertmaster, chamber musician, and among the preeminent teachers of orchestral technique. Jorja K. Fleezanis was a young prodigy who embraced music passionately. So talented she was that her musical journey took flight as a young teenager at Interlochen Arts Academy in the mid-60s. Her lifelong best friend and roommate, Pat Louie, affectionately called Bunky at Interlochen, said, "Our bond was a shared vision and purpose for our lives, an intentional connection to our work." Jorja's career was marked by tenacity and daring when at just 23 she came to play in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, a lifelong career for most, but a stepping stone for Jorja.
I remember when I was sitting in the back of the section in Chicago, I looked at the front of the section all the time, looked at how they did it, watched how I thought I might do it differently, and that sort of agitation and almost magnetism for me to see the front drew me to think that I might actually want to be a leader.
She soon found herself in San Francisco, auditioning for conductor Edo de Waart. Edo recalls, Jorja was a force of nature. She walked out and played Sibelius. It was actually the wrong piece, but it didn't matter. She brought more to the music than anyone I've ever worked with. Jorja won the Associate Concertmaster chair of the San Francisco Symphony in 1981. Despite her busy orchestral schedule, Jorja managed to push even harder and co-created a trio of musicians with amazing chemistry called the Fog Trio, which stood for Fleezanis, Olsen, and Grabanye. The trio gained a huge popularity in the Bay Area. They regularly performed at the Palace of the Legion of Honor Museum. It was a small auditorium with incredible acoustics. It was understood by each member of the Fog that this is for pleasure. This is for us. Around the same time, Jorja met and married Michael Steinberg, who was the eminent music critic for the Boston Globe. Michael came out west to write program notes for the San Francisco Symphony, and after he first met Jorja, exclaimed to a close friend, "I'm going to marry that woman." They were married in 1983 until Michael's passing in 2009. In 1989, Edo de Waart, who is now music director of the Minnesota Orchestra, reached out to his old friend.
That call came one day when he said, "You know what? I'm thinking of changing the concertmaster in Minnesota, and I want you to consider coming." And he said, "I know the work that you did, I know what you're capable of, and you're who I want in this chair." And I thought, the back-breaking, in my mind, necessary work for the sake of music. And I think that's what's very important about this story. It wasn't about me at all. In fact, the fact I got a reward, in a sense it was a reward, but I mean, being a concertmaster is not, it's a reward of a kind. It's hard work, and it takes real warriorship.
She was the first woman to serve in this chair in the history of the Minnesota Orchestra. When interviewed by Eric Escala on Almanac at the beginning of her time in Minnesota, Jorja had this to say.
The sound and the effect of the sound that one can have on the orchestra, it can be fairly significant. I think the way you choose to get the orchestra going, get the strings going, and the way they use the bow has a lot to do with it. Either you're someone who uses a sort of conservative amount of bow, or you're someone who uses a tremendous amount of the bow.
Now, what's the difference in the sound if I'm going and somebody goes like this or somebody goes like this? What's the difference in the sound?
Well, you look a lot more active when you do that latter gesture, and of course that's part of what generates physical kinetic energy on stage, which is something that is a fascinating subject. I don't often know what happens, but we're all highly sensitive human beings on that stage.
Is there sexism in the orchestra business?
Well, this is a good question. I think that it hasn't been altogether undercover that the woman has not been in that chair for almost traditionally. In fact, there's certain orchestras in Europe, the Vienna Philharmonic, which does not have a single woman among its ranks.
How can that be?
Well, that's just their tradition, and tradition is much heavier and important to them than anything concerning social change and equality. And it's very, for some of us, very irate to still see that happening. Certainly when I joined the Chicago Symphony as a 23-year-old, I was one of maybe 10 or 11 women in the orchestra. And now you can look at the San Francisco Symphony, where I recently came from, St. Louis Symphony, and there can be upwards of 40, 50 women, which is almost half of the complement of the orchestra.
So quite a change.
Georgia held the position in Minnesota for 2 decades, becoming the longest tenured concertmaster in their history to date. Her tenure served as a watershed, making the position accessible to the many women who now lead orchestras from that chair. The Minnesota Orchestra commissioned 2 major solo works for her, the John Adams Violin Concerto, which she debuted in 1994 with Edo de Waard conducting, and Icon of Eros by Sir John Tavener, which she and the orchestra premiered in 2003. And for this performance, Georgia would now be using the exquisite Gofriller violin made in 1700.
In 2003, I was on a committee at the orchestra where we were informed that a beautiful violin was available. It was a violin that Georgia had been interested in. And I went home and told my husband about this instrument. And his response was, why shouldn't we purchase that instrument for the orchestra? I guess my biggest surprise was to find out that that instrument was attached to the most beautiful person. And because of that purchase, we became such good friends with Georgia and enjoyed 20 years of friendship.
Georgia's violin was made by Matteo Gofriller. He was the premier Venetian maker. He founded the Venetian School of Violin Making.
I think this really suited her personality and her needs. She needed to, as the section leader and frequent soloist, she needed to be heard over the section and occasionally over the orchestra, and this lends the power to do that. The versatility of this instrument was one of the things that I think attracted her to it in the first place.
And what Georgia said to me quite a while later was, you know, Claire, playing this violin is like being on vacation. And it means that the violin fit her hand, it fit her body, and it allowed her to just express herself.
I was so pleased that Georgia was able to purchase the violin and take it to the University of Indiana, where she was a teacher.
In 2009, Georgia lost her beloved husband Michael, and in his memory formed a nonprofit organization, the Michael Steinberg and Jorja Fleezanis Fund. Its mission is to commission new music from emerging composers, combining it with the written word. Her passion for young artists also extended to teaching and mentoring at the Jacobs School of Music at Indiana University.
That's a very important thing. It's about your hard work that is going to make you stand out. A lot of people coasting through life. A lot of people that are coasters. Or tourists, I like to say. You know, they look at the book and, okay, that's fine. Now I know Paris.
In 2011, Georgia received an honorary doctorate from the New England Conservatory.
The path in front of you will wind in many unexpected directions, directions that may frustrate you, surprise you, enchant you. These turns in the road will move you forward in your life and challenge your wits, talents, dedication, and sense of adventure. Taking the next curve with determination is mandatory in my book, for there, just out of view, may be the very challenge you need in order to see the next vista point in yourself.
In 2021, Jorja returned to her alma mater at Interlochen Arts Academy to wake up and inspire the next generation of musicians.
Spicier, more exciting. Get excited about music, people. People who are playing on their own radar. I either want you to leave the room right now or you join the group. You just have to know you can do this, sweetie. The satisfaction of teaching has become enormous to me, and I also see that even in this last hour and a half that I was with the students here at Interlochen, I can see how really vulnerable they are without a tutor, without a mentor, without at least someone who's been out there in the world with a lot of credential to come to them and spend an hour and a half with them and to see what it means to them. I have no question I'm doing the right thing right now. Stay with it.
Jorja continued to coach and share her wealth of music in all its nuance.
Okay, how about a little bit less hot with the vibrato? Less heat, less heat. Just sing like you're singing up there. Just don't play with so much tension in your vibrato. Try to relax it just once. I want you to hear it. Okay. So let's try with no vibrato once to the top, just to hear the sound. Oh, I like that.
This was among the last master classes Jorja ever conducted. She returned home to the beauty of her surroundings, overlooking Lake Michigan, to renew, refresh, and focus on completing a final draft of Michael's reviews and moving forward with the 2023 commission premiere next May of For the Sleepwalkers by composer Jung-Young Wee. It is fitting that now Jorja has the last word.
At some point, this conversation will be remembered on some level in you. And when I'm not here anymore, that is what's going to be the candle that I left to each of you. That's how it goes. This is how it goes.
With these thoughts and stories, I send you off into your adventures with the simple truths of giving your all with total devotion, heart, and intention, and never, ever losing sight of the highest priority of the artist, without which we are lost: the music. Thank you and Godspeed.